What's up guys, it's Chris here. Now, property is an incredibly important part of every portfolio, and that is for a couple of reasons. It has an underlying asset base, it gives you capital growth and share price growth, and on top of that it also brings you income and pays you dividends from yearly to quarterly and all the way up to monthly on a consistent basis that grows over time. If we're talking about being long-term investors, we have to talk about property investment. And right now in the markets, we are in a time where it could be one of the best times to buy property shares within the next 10 years. So in today's video, we will tell you why it could be a good time to buy property shares, and more importantly, we'll show you how we researched every property fund in EasyEquities to show what exactly is the very best one to put your money into. This is one not to be missed, so let's get started. So welcome back, and I just want to say thank you for being here. The support from you guys on the channel lately has been absolutely amazing. Now, let's start by chatting about a few things. First, let's chat property and then the markets, and then why those current markets mean it might be a good idea to invest in property. So I've said it on the channel before that 80% of self-made millionaires either made their wealth through property or invest in property. And over the course of history, it has been a long-term, constant grower of both wealth and income across the world. Now, there are many ways to invest in real estate, some of which are to buy physical properties that we've covered a bit on the channel. But if you start with one property, you run the risk of a bad tenant who doesn't pay and the legal fees to get them out. That's why many people invest in property through the markets, like real estate investment trusts, like your growth points and redefines, or they invest in more diversified options like property ETFs and unit trusts, so you don't put all your eggs in one basket and it happens to be like Robosis. It also means you have more chance to benefit from the ones that do well. I much prefer to grow wealth and income over time with diversified risk and returns. So while we're on the topic, let's talk about the markets. We know they have been through tough times recently because of rising inflation and high interest rates, but some good news happened this week with the Federal Reserve in the USA when they decided to pause raising interest rates. Now, we don't have a crystal ball, but it might signal that we are starting to turn a corner, that by the end of the year rates might start coming down, and that is good news for property funds. You see, prices have been down lately for property funds because interest rates going up increases their cost of lending and their bank repayments, which means expenses go up, so share prices are depressed. That means two things for us. It means prices for shares are cheaper, and it means dividend percentages are higher per share. But if and when interest rates start going down, prices should start going up. So right now might be a good time to top up our property shares for higher dividend percentages now and profits in share price later. Again, no one has a crystal ball, but historically that has been the trend. And that is why in this last week I spent hours researching every property-focused ETF and unit trust available on EasyEquities, and I used major financial measurement tools, which we'll get to now, to pit them all up against each other, compare apples with apples, see exactly which property funds, both local and international, are giving the worst and the absolute best returns available to us right now as investors. And as always on this channel, we're going to share it with all of you. So without any delay, let's jump right into the results. But first, let's check out what we're looking for. The idea is to be able to invest into the property sector with either local or global exposure to real estate, and then ideally to have our capital grow by way of share price and to receive the best income by way of dividends. But with income also comes expenses, and each of these funds will charge management fees by the companies that run them. So we'll be looking at the name of the fund right here, and the shorter tracker symbol here so you know exactly which one it is, then the type, whether it's an ETF or unit trust, and whether it invests in local or global property, then the performance metrics here, which is when it pays dividends, what the dividend percentage is, how much the fund will charge with the total expense ratio, which is an annual fee, and lastly how this fund has performed over the last 1 year, 6 months and 1 month. And here are the results for the unit trusts. Now, ETFs tend to be higher risk and higher return, and we'll get to those right after, but let's take a look at this table here. So you can see we have got 11 unit trusts, and all of these are available on EasyEquities. We have got funds from Satrix, ABSA, Hollard, 91, Old Mutual, Stanlib, and many of the big unit trust providers. Interestingly, only one of the fund managers have got a global property fund, which is the M&G Global Property Feeder Fund. The rest are all local South Africa-based funds. Then 8 of them pay dividends quarterly or every 3 months, and all of those pay you income in March, June, September, and December. 2 of them, the Satrix and Hollard funds, pay twice a year in June and December. And lastly is the M&G Global Feeder Fund that we spoke about, that actually doesn't pay any dividends and relies on capital growth entirely. But I will say, if you do want some global property exposure, then stick around for the ETFs because we have quite a few of those there. But now we have the important part, which are the results. If you wanted to invest in a property unit trust, which of these here would give you the best profits, growth, and income? Now here I need to say that different people will have different criteria, so some may value share growth more than income, and others will be wanting the higher dividend percentage. So there is not one definitive answer, but we can definitely see some good and bad performers, and one of those bad performers is the ABSA Property Equity Fund. With just minimal share price growth of 0.02% for 1 month and 3% in a year, it is still sitting with the lowest actual dividend income at 4.83%. Now normally that is not a bad dividend, but if you look at the rest, which are from 6 to 9%, this actually comes in at the lowest for dividend income, and it also has the highest total expense ratio with 1.74%. Now I know what you're thinking, the M&G Global Fund doesn't pay any dividends, and that is true, but that is the purpose of this fund, and although it might not be for everyone, you can see why, because without paying dividends it has been able to reach the highest capital growth out of all of them with a great performance of 10.78% over 1 year. But if you are looking for capital growth, don't go anywhere yet because some of the global ETFs are even higher. Then on the lowest end of the share price growth, we have the Stanlib Property Income with a negative 4.5% for the 1 year and an average income percent. So I wouldn't personally invest in the Stanlib fund. But as we go to the fund with the absolute highest dividend income, we find here the Hollard Prime Property Fund with a whopping 8.92% dividend, so the highest dividend payment, and share price is pretty flat. So not great but not bad either in any way, so it seems that if you like dividends, this is a decent option. Now the rest of the expense ratios are honestly pretty similar, between 1 to 1.5%. But interestingly, that is over 5 times higher than some of the ETFs that we'll get to now. So guys, before we get to the ETFs, if you do want to receive information like this with the full spreadsheet and analysis before these videos come out, then you're welcome to join the Casual Cash Club over on Patreon, where I posted this full breakdown on Saturday. But it's not only that, it's a place where I share all of the behind the scenes looks at my investing journey. I post all of my portfolio buys and sells in real time as they happen, as well as breakdowns each month of my full passive income and expenses in rands and cents and which companies they come from. I'm also posting tips and tricks that I use to try be a better investor, and market news as it happens, like when interest rates are changing. And lastly, when you join, you also receive a spreadsheet that will help you track your investment journey with all of your shares and their income and expenses and values, that calculates and creates graphs automatically based on the numbers that you put in. And lastly, it's a place to chat with me and other investors one-on-one with your questions, thoughts, and your portfolio choices, which is what Casual Cash is all about. So if that's something you want to try out, please check the Patreon link in the description below, and I hope to see you there. But with that said, let's jump right into the results for the property ETFs. Okay, so here we go. Now, in contrast to the unit trusts, here we have 6 ETFs, and 3 of them are locally based with South African property, and 3 of them are globally based with properties across the world. So the first 2 we actually have in our own portfolio, which is the Satrix Property Portfolio, which is local, and we have 6,700 Rand in our tax-free savings account, and the Satrix Retway Global Property ETF, which is global, and that we have 9,300 Rand in our ZAR accounts. Then the One Best, I think that's how you say it, Global REIT and the SA Property, and lastly the Core Share South African Property and the Signia Global Property ETF. All of these pay dividends every 3 months, and all pay in March, June, September, and December. But let's get into some of the details. Now, we saw something similar with another video we did when we looked through income funds, which was that the global funds tended to have better capital growth, and as a result they had a lower dividend percentage. because here we can see the OneVest Global and the Signia Global with the absolute lowest dividend income at 2.72 and 2.38% respectively, but they also had the highest one-year growth at 12.43 and 12.46%. So it seems quite straightforward that if you want better share growth to go global and perhaps better dividends would be local. But in saying that, it seems like my Satrix Global didn't get the memo because it slightly contracted over the 1 year, which is against the trend. So maybe I need to look at that and potentially move it. But then when we move on over to dividend income, we see that the Satrix Local Fund made the lowest growth with -4%, but it has the absolute highest dividend return out of all of the other ETFs with a very nice 7.49%. So again, we see a similar trade-off between the two. So what we've seen is low prices and high dividends, or high price and low dividends. But is there a Goldilocks option? Well, we can see that the Core Shares South African Property Fund seems to tick both boxes with a decent income of 7% and a 2.6% share price growth over 1 year. Probably out of all of them, it seems to be the most sensible to buy. Okay, so there you have it guys, the absolute full table of all of the possible unit trust and ETF property funds available in EasyEquities, and we've given out some of the good options and some of the bad ones. But keep in mind as well that looking at the past results won't always predict the future results. It's just to give us an indication. But with the potential for interest rates to come down or to start lowering on the horizon, this may be an asset class to consider for your portfolio. But as always, be sure to look up any of the funds and do your own research if any of these are something that you're considering to add. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please be sure to click on the like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Remember that if you want to join us in the Casual Cash Club and get access to all of the additional benefits, then the link is below in the description. But until then, I'll see you guys next time, as always, on Casual Cash. Cheers.